first off, Gary, team news-wise, it's been a bit of a tricky time with injuries the last few weeks. How is the squad looking?
Well, it's not looking as big as we'd like it to.
Yes.
And every day extra is a bonus, I suppose. But obviously, every time you have a game and it doesn't go so well, or you don't get a result, then obviously you're looking to get that bigger squad back very quickly, a lot quicker. So we won't know just yet, but there's a few that are close, but they've been close for the last couple of weeks, and nobody's fault. It's just a little bit sort of frustrating because they're little niggly injuries that are not quite clearing up yet, and so we'll have to wait and see on that one. But meanwhile, the lads that are selected have to do the job, and they nearly done the job Saturday, just for the fact that we had 17 opportunities, good opportunities. However, the other team had 9 good opportunities, and that runs the risk of them winning the game, of course. There was a lot of crosses coming in, so I was a bit disappointed with the amount of opportunities they had. But we mustn't forget that we created 17 chances as well, and I think that was what you, Dave, was alluding to a little bit at the end of the game. The offside goal, I checked after you spoke to me, and it was onside, 100% onside. So that would have made it 3-1. Jake had a great chance to make it 3-1 as well. And then all of a sudden, from that moment on, I don't know whether the lads were gutted or relaxed or what they did, but the second goal, can you do much about that? It was an unbelievable volley that he hit from nowhere, and obviously with the wind behind him, it went over Lucas. And the third one was a bad goal from our point of view, because with the amount of crosses they were putting in, they were due to get on the end of at least one of them, and that's what they did. So it's always really disappointing when you get beat like that at home in the 90th minute, that sort of stuff. Yeah. But I've got to look at both the positives and the negatives, and then work on our negatives and keep reiterating and keeping the belief in our positives.
How frustrating is it? You talked about, I think, 17 chances to 9. How frustrating is it, A, that you only converted 2 of those, and B, that you gave Eastleigh on the other night 9 really good opportunities and they took a third of them?
Well, that's the way it is, isn't it? That's sometimes what happens in these games. Sometimes somebody will only have 2 shots and win a game 1-0, and the other team might have been unlucky and had 10 shots. You know what I mean? So that's how football is, and the more we're all in it, the more we see that quite often. But as a manager and a coach and coaches, you put your team out to go and create chances, and then at one end, so you're doing half the job, because 2 goals at home should win a game. But then you have to work on the things that have not quite worked out for you, and then sometimes you have to put your hands up and say that the opposition have done well, and there's some good teams in this league.
Yes.
So, but you can't cry over spilt milk. You clean it up and you buy another pint, don't you? You know what I mean? So, and that's what we want to do. And I think it's still early days, and this group has still got a little bit of work to do before we become the force that we want to be.
Obviously, you talked about it, I think it was last week before the game, about how you had a target if you want to, where you want to be and what wins you want to do and things like that. The recent record's not great, but I'm sure you will have seen some positives in that. What do you reckon you need to kind of work on in order to start getting back to the winning ways that you had at the very beginning of the season?
Well, it's obviously team selection. We've got to be able to select from a bigger group of people. Some of the people that have come in have done good, have done okay, and they've shown themselves to be nearer the first team than they were before they got the chance. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's good for the future.
Who's impressed you in particular then? Are there a couple of guys who in particular you've kind of thought, actually, you've stepped up and he's done really well? Yeah,
well, I think both the 2 centre midfielders have done well, Frankie and Busey. I think it's the first time Busey's played at this sort of level. Definitely the first time he's played at this level. Yeah. Frankie's still only 18, 19. And and we you know, I think Robbie Cundy's come in as a new player. Ben Whitfield's come in as a new player. You know, not been part of what we were doing last year. So I think both of those have done okay. It's just the whole group. You know, sometimes you get these little runs where it don't quite go right for you. You've got a few injuries, a few new players. And I mentioned about a naivety, and that's really down to the lack of experience, really, of some of us. But how do they get that experience? You have to play them, and you have to keep them going, and you can't change the team every sort of 5 minutes because you know, or your shape or your philosophy. So we'll always keep to the philosophy, because I've been in these runs before. And if you go changing the shape, changing this, changing that, then all of a sudden you do that too often. Nobody knows really quite where they stand. So you keep plugging away at the philosophy. They're all great lads. Nobody's doing it because they're you know, that way inclined, that sort of character. We've got some great characters, and they feel it. And that's why sometimes you can be their dad and have a bit of a go at them at some stage, but then very shortly after you've got to build them up again, and that's what we have to do. And the crowd have been doing that recently. It's been good. We all went home disappointed, of course, but you know, the next home game they'll be there again, and you know, that's all we can ask. It's
a fine balancing act, isn't it? And you go into this Stockport game at the weekend, and somebody texted me and said, "You realise this is the National League North National League Cup Super Cup because the champions of both leagues."
Yeah, well, I don't know whether that will motivate them even more or not, but the motivation has got to be both teams are on a, you know,
pretty similar records,
similar records, similar run. But no, we got to go there and win a game, and they've got to win. You know, they got to see it from their point of view, and they've got to win a game as well. So you know, we've got to do all we can, as we do in training, to make sure that first of all everybody's fit. We had a couple of on Saturday, on Tuesday. I noticed there was a little bit of disgruntlement regarding the substitutions. Well, generally I know the supporters think like me, so they've got to believe that I know a bit more than they do in particular situations. Not that I know more than them, but in these situations.
That plays fitness and things like that. You know what's up with
it's fair to say that, of course, I would never have took Ben Whitfield off unless he had a problem, which he did. He'd had a sciatica problem and a hamstring problem 3 or 4 days before the game, but decided to play. And he did okay for us, but then he'd gone with 10-15 minutes to go. He was feeling it. I think he'd be all right, by the way, for the weekend, which was good. But unfortunately, we missed him. But I had to make that substitution. And Jake hasn't played. That was his first, I think, 90 minutes for a long time, and he was struggling. And I know when they look over at me with them sort of tired eyes, and people say, "Please take me off," like, you know, and then,
sort of puppy dog eyes.
Yeah, and then you know. So unfortunately, when Kalala came on, you know, the fella hit the volley. Yeah. So there's nothing we could have done about that. And then the third one was, you know, what they've been doing all for the whole time, and that was getting their crosses in and took their chance. And the fella, little sub, got in, and they brought him on, I think, to keep the game, to make it 2-2, like, you know, and then just to have that one up front, but he got in. So it was disappointing. But so, you know, I don't make decisions willy-nilly. You know, I make decisions on. Well, my son was at the game, and he said to me, he said, how could you have taken them 2 off? You know what I mean? So I thought, in case people are moaning down here, you can't always explain why you've done things, but they were 2 pretty good reasons for why I had to change the shape. And when the opposition score during them sort of times, then obviously, you know, the manager can sometimes, people go, "What's he doing?" But I want to explain what I did and why I did it.
Fair enough, and you've explained very well.
Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. That's
Even though I just pulled it out from nowhere.
It's all right. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, go on. Stockport, you stop me.
I would say Stockport. Where do you feel the dangers lie there on that side? You know, a side that have come up like yourselves, similar record like yourselves.
Yeah.
What have you got to look out for?
I think the danger is at Stockport is they get a big gate. So, you know, you're looking at 5.5, sometimes 4.5, 5.5, and they get behind their team. when they're going well. When it's not going so well, then like everywhere, you get a few disgruntled supporters. But you know, Jim Gannon's got that sort of personality and character that he'll keep them going. So it'll be the wounded animal. But you know what you've got is you've got two wounded animals up against each other. So we'll have to see which one comes through it. You just got to make sure that you play your game, you get your game right, you take the opportunities when they come your way, or more opportunities than we've been taking. I don't want to win a game 5-4, but I know I've always said I'd rather win 5-4 than 1-0, but I'll take a 1-0 at the moment. But at the same time, I want the boys to keep that same philosophy that we know that we brought the players in for. So now it's just fine tuning now. That's from our point of view. Stockport's point of view, we'll have to wait and see what they come up with. It's a big jump between the National South and the Conference.
Yeah.
As far as, you know, it's a wider gap in quality. But then when you get to the National Conference, there's not that big a gap between the Conference and the Second Division, in my opinion. I think, you know, the teams that have gone up have done okay. The teams that have come down are not flying away with the league.
No,
you know what I mean?
no.
So I think that once you get, you know, all the teams are full time, and then, you know,
that's a key point.
there's the same amount of money being shelled
Yeah.
out in the Conference as there is in the Second Division.
Yeah.
So if you can compete at this level, then you'll probably be okay at the next one.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I mean, I watching the other night, Eastleigh, I mean, they haven't had a great run, have they? They were where they are. I know the points difference isn't great in the middle of the table, is it?
No, it's all pretty
and yet,
tight.
you know, we played. Were it not for their goalkeeper, we would probably have been 2 or 3 up by half time. We were well on top for long periods of the game, and yet they still had they just had a long trip to Fylde on the Saturday, come down to us, etc., 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 and yet they still had this and that to hang in there, didn't they? And keep. And in fairness to them, they always looked like they thought we'll get something here.
Yeah, no, that's right. But I think when you look
that might not have happened last season. That we might have put them away. Last season.
You might got exactly. Well, you've got to have more quality in both boxes when you go up the levels.
Yeah.
But I think you'll see when Pat puts his highlights together of the chances, which is always nice to put out there, because sometimes you don't realise. You go back and you think, oh yeah, the keeper stopped Reedy's chip and made a good save, and made a great save from Liam Davis, and there was a few good opportunities. Obviously, the goal, which was a goal, you see that on the highlights. Jake's header, the little volley that Rory sort of got in his way a little bit, and he missed the chance. Didn't get in his way, but they were both there to put it in.
No.
So people will see that, and when you sort of like narrow it down to the opportunities, that's when you think, well, actually, we created a few chances then.
Yeah.
And then obviously when you see their chances, you go, however, we've got to stop more of their chances. Everyone's going to get opportunities, but you just got to cut them down at one end and add to them the other.
I wondered what you'd said, because at half time there were people around us, not just the reporters but other than the crowd, they were looking at each other and saying, Christ, we've seen some stuff here in this first half. It was almost like the first half hour against Maidenhead. We were moving the ball so quickly. I mean, that little move in front of you down there, everybody was going, wow, what's going on here? You know, that was way above, and yet we were only one up, but still in a good place. And I wondered whether you at half time did not good enough to the speech, or whether you what do you say in that situation? You're pleased, but
I was pleased that we was 1-0 up, but then at the same time they had been dangerous from 1 or 2 sort of dangerous crosses. You know what I mean? And the little fella on the right there, who
smart,
he played against us at
Basingstoke,
and he was going to Sunderland on trial, and he just they kept giving it to him, and he was one touch and putting it in, and his crosses were like right on the money, which was higher than this level as far as crosses are concerned. You see all that with Man City in the Premiership. You know what I mean? And we didn't deal with it. Liam dealt with it for a small period of time. It was just at the start and at the end when he's putting all them crosses in, and then they were flying in there, you know, because
Yeah.
they've got an experienced team. Holland just breaks into the box, so it was, you know, we mustn't think that there's anyone we definitely can beat,
No.
you know, and we mustn't ever think that we can, you know, that we can beat everybody either. Do you know what I mean? So we got to hang on in there, get our fully fit squad competing for places, and then. But if you take the positive from this period, a lot of lads have got some good experience, whereas they might not have done had everybody been fit. So that puts you in good stead for the second half of the season, as far as the lads gaining a bit of experience.